Okay, we did ours on the court cases, and we divided it up by court cases, so like 3 people in each group, 2 or 3. Anyways, my group, these people right here, was Park versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It was the first court case that had to deal with it and everything. It happened in 1971, and Park stands for Pennsylvania Association for Retarded Children. Back then, like, there was nothing against, like, saying the word retarded. Nowadays, of course, that's not allowed in school, so it's frowned upon and stuff like that. So, it was basically going against, like, they weren't wanting to provide public education for children with mental retardation. And there were very few classes that were offered for kids, even with, like, little disabilities. Like, they didn't want to accommodate for anyone or make room for them. So, this was mainly about students with moderate, severe, or profound, like, mental retardation issues, and they were excluded from everything, but the court case went in favor for Park, and it provided education programs for students with mental retardation, and parents, if they weren't happy with what was going on and they didn't agree with it and feel like their kid was getting enough, then they could have a hearing about it. So.
And the court case was won on October 13th of that year, which provided education from ages 6 to 21 years of age. And the most important aspect that wasn't considered was like a main environment for children with disabilities.
Just to go a little bit more in depth to what they said, it was the very first court case for the right to educate, and basically it was to just overturn the Pennsylvania law that just to secure the education for all students. And as she said, the court case, it resulted in, the states agreed to provide public education for all students 6 to 21. And the impact that it has had on our schools today, which was mentioned by one of the other groups earlier today, like the zero rejection, it means it's like the principle that all children are capable of learning and shouldn't be excluded from, programs, that all the other children, can go. And another one is the least restrictive environment with students with disability. If they can be, they should be educated alongside their other peers. And another one is appropriate education, which basically states that the education provided should be appropriate for the students that it is being provided to. So that's just the impact that it has, had on the education today. Basically saying, even children with disabilities can be integrated, with their peers.
We had bills versus the Board of Education, and basically 7 special needs kids were denied free public education in the Washington, D.C. area, and they took it to court. And the board argued that the students were unable to be educated due to their exceptional needs, because at that time, even if there was a minor disability, it was still too exceptional for them to deal with. Later in the case, the board also stated that the cost of providing private education was too high and that their only alternative was to stay at home. And because of this, an estimated 12,340 children were not educated in the 1971 to 72 school year.
What was the outcome? The federal courts made a ruling, and it made it clear that the schools owed students the equal protection of the law without discrimination or bias of disability. What this means is students cannot be discriminated against being educated due to disability. This can be analogous to the Brown Board versus the Board of Education ruling in regards to race. This shows that there's a very powerful ruling that's behind every student who gets educated. It's a really important ruling because before this time, I don't think people, they kept throwing disability education into a corner, and it wasn't put in the mainstay to be. You could always talk out of it, move to the side, or blame something like money or something, like we don't have the resources for it. But with this case, it says it's not an excuse. You have to educate these students if they're financial constraints is you cannot like put up there is like you can't disenfranchise the students solely on their disabilities. And this is what the schooling really amounts to. And an impact, of course, this case set a new standard that educational services must be made based on the student's need.
This also,
I'm sorry, what was the name of the case again?
Mills versus Board of
Mills.
Education.
Thank you.
This also helped set up the predecessor for the IDEA. So basically you can see the great impact that this one did have on special education.
We had Raleigh versus Henrick Hudson School District.
This case basically was about this student, Amy Rowland. She was a hearing impaired student, and she was placed in a regular classroom, and they decided that she would receive a tutor for an hour each day, a speech therapist for 3 hours a week, and she also was given an FM translator. And her parents wanted her to get an interpreter because she was deaf, and they gave it to her for 2 weeks, but after that they refused to give it to her because they said she didn't need it, she had good grades, and it wasn't beneficial to her. And her parents just kept requesting hearings with people like saying that she should get it because of her disability. But basically everybody just said the same thing, like it's not benefiting her, she's already doing good, it's not nothing, I mean, it's not necessary basically. And so they just basically took the case to court.
With the court, the school stated that she didn't need the interpreter because she was performing well enough with the aids that they had already provided with the FM transmitter, which blocks out background noises and it increases the voices, and so that way she hears them more clearly. The court actually sided with the school, saying that Amy was not entitled to the interpreter, but she was still provided all the other aids that she had gotten before they tried to get the interpreter. And with this, the impact is that it's free and appropriate public education. That means it's appropriate, it doesn't have to be optimal, okay? What happens is she gets everything she needs to succeed in school. Just because they would like the interpreter doesn't mean she has to have it because she was achieving her goals with what she had already.
The court case that we had was Daniel R.R. versus the State Board of Education. And it took place in El Paso, Texas, 1989. Daniel was a 6-year-old boy who was diagnosed with Down syndrome, but he developmentally was at the level of a 2-year-old. And his parents, the reason why they took it to the courts is because he was going to be taken out of regular classrooms because the teachers thought that he cannot interact with non-handicapped children. So his parents argued that the local school district had failed to comply with education of the Handicap Act.
Basically, the Circuit Court of Appeals said that a segregated class was an appropriate placement for a student with Down syndrome. It established 2 things that came into compliance with the LRE. One of the things that said that if the student can make progress and benefit in a general classroom with modification and using aids and services. Number 2, the student has to be integrated to the maximum extent. So basically it said that the educator has the right to put the student in a segregated classroom or a classroom with handicapped students, but they also have to come in agreement with the LRE, so that's what these 2 points are for. Basically the fact where the teachers and the school systems can no longer place a student with disabilities in a segregated classroom just because they're handicapped. They can't just judge a person and say, well, since the person has special needs, they have to go in the special needs classroom. You can't do that. They have to try and integrate them as much as possible into a general classroom. But if it is necessary to put them in a segregated classroom, then it is allowed.